Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on a process that shapes our entire legal system, legal research. So let's dive right in.
Think about it for a second. How does a law really get changed? It's a huge question. We might picture dramatic courtroom showdowns or fiery debates in Parliament, but the real work, it starts way before any of that.
That's right. It all begins with research. Before any landmark case is decided or a new law is even drafted, there's this incredibly deep process of inquiry happening behind the scenes. It's not just about finding answers. It's about asking the right questions in the first place.
So, what do we actually mean when we say legal research? It's a term that gets thrown around a lot, but I promise you it goes way beyond just blowing the dust off old case files in a library. Check out this definition. The two words that really jump out are creative and systematic. See, research isn't just about collecting facts that are already out there. It's about systematically building on what we know to create totally new insights and figure out new ways to apply them. And this is a really big deal. This whole approach completely challenges the old idea that law is just some fixed, unchanging set of rules handed down from on high. Instead, legal research treats the law like a living, breathing system, one that needs to be constantly checked, questioned, and improved to keep up with the world we live in today.
So, to really get their arms around a legal issue, researchers have this kind of toolkit, right? It's a set of different lenses they can look through, and each lens gives them a totally unique perspective on the problem.
First up, you've got doctrinal research. This is probably the one you'd imagine. It's the classic black-letter law approach. This is all about the nuts and bolts. What does the law actually say? It's about systematically explaining the rules, how they connect, and even trying to predict where things are headed. This is the foundation.
Okay, next we switch to the reform-oriented lens. This is where we start asking the tough questions. You know, we know what the law is, but is it any good? Is it actually working for people? This type of research is all about evaluating whether our laws are doing their job, and then recommending concrete ways to fix them if they're not.
Now, the theoretical lens. This is where we zoom way out. We're not just talking about the rules on the page anymore. We're talking about the big ideas behind the rules. You know, fundamental concepts like justice, fairness, and equity. This research dives deep into the philosophical bedrock of our entire legal system. And finally, we have fundamental research. This lens looks outward. It examines law as this incredibly powerful social force. How does the law shape our society, our economy, our politics? And, just as important, how do all those things shape the law right back? It's what connects the theory to the real world.
And that connection to the real world, it's absolutely crucial. Because, let's be real, law doesn't exist in a vacuum. The world is constantly changing, and the law, and how we research it, has to adapt right along with it.
You can see this shift so clearly right here. For a long time, the thinking was very rigid, almost like an Old Testament formalism, where the law was seen as a closed, logical system. The idea was that judges just found the right answer. But we've moved to a new legalism that's much more flexible. It acknowledges that you have to consider things like public policy, justice, and modern conditions.
And you can actually watch this evolution happen in real time in common law systems like Australia's. It's fascinating. In '73, the UK pivots towards Europe. Then a huge moment in '86. Australia cuts its final legal ties to the UK. That's a massive step. By the '90s, their own top court is openly talking about policy. And by the 2000s, international law is a huge factor. You can literally see them forging their own independent legal path.
And this wasn't just some abstract idea floating around in universities. This came from the very top. The Chief Justice himself basically said, look, the world has changed. We can't just keep relying on old English cases to solve modern Australian problems. That's a game changer of a statement.
So, we've seen the big picture of how the law evolves. But how does one person, one researcher, actually plug into this massive system? Well, there's a blueprint, a 12-step roadmap that takes a single idea and turns it into research that can have a real impact. This is the engine room of legal change.
All right, steps 1 through 6. This is all about laying the groundwork, making sure your foundation is rock solid. You're picking a topic, finding a supervisor to guide you, planning the project meticulously, and documenting every step. Then, and this is key, you're honing in on your exact research question and building the conceptual framework that's going to hold the whole thing together.
Okay, the foundation is built. Now for the second half, execution. This is where the rubber meets the road. You're choosing your methods and using them ethically, of course. You write up a formal proposal, and then you put your ideas to the test by presenting them to other experts.
You write a literature review to show where your work fits in the grand scheme of things, and then, finally, you bring it all home in the research paper itself.
And look, going through all 12 of those steps isn't just about getting a publication or a good grade. This rigorous process has real, tangible consequences for every single one of us.
Because this is where change actually starts. Every single law that gets reformed, every policy that gets improved, every step we take towards a more just and effective legal system, you can bet it's built on the foundation of this kind of careful, structured, evidence-based work.
And that really is the ultimate goal. I love how the author of our source material puts it. The whole point of all this demanding work is to create a stronger evidence base so we can get to what really matters: improve policy and legal outcomes. Better laws for everybody.
So, for centuries, this very disciplined, very human process of inquiry has been what drives legal progress forward. But now, we've got AI in the mix, and it leaves us with a really big question, doesn't it? In an age of artificial intelligence, what is the future of legal research? Will AI become a powerful new tool, or something else entirely? That's a question we'll all be exploring in the years to come.